Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, September 26th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Washington game in one day, the game against Michigan in 64 days. We're going to be joined today once again by our buddy Ross Fulton, the X's and O's guru at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And when Ross is on the show, we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Washington defense and their matchup with the Ohio State offense. A lot of the story this week has been around a couple injuries on that Washington defense. The Huskies already potentially going to be facing a little bit of an uphill climb against the Ohio State offense, and that is only going to get a little steeper with the loss of Buda Alukta, who's one of their linebackers. Jed Fisher said earlier in the week he is definitely out for this game, and Takario Davis, one of their cornerbacks. He is also, his status a little more up in the air for this weekend. There's definitely a couple real areas of concern for Washington. But Ross, I wanted to start with Brian Walters, the defensive coordinator for Washington. He, of course, was at Illinois, was a defensive coordinator under Brett Bielema for a number of years, very successful there, then had a couple of years as head coach at Purdue, not so successful there. But he is known basically as a defensive coordinator as a man guy. Man. Now, all those kind of things, it's always a little oversimplifying things, but when you talk about a Ryan Walters defense, what are you expecting from them this weekend?
It's not too simplified. It's a lot of man. He's had a unique style. They play a 6-1, which is sort of a variation of the penny front that Matt Patricia's been using, but you put an extra linebacker or nickel up there. We've seen Ohio State do that a little bit. A ton of man, and they play it in a somewhat unique way where that deep safety is basically in the parking lot. He's like, if you're watching on television, you won't see that guy on the screen, even pre-snap. He's 20 yards back. They mix in, they're like, his change up to that has always been cover 2 or Tampa 2. And, the goal is just take away the run game. Now, as Ryan Day talked about during his press conference, I think they've mixed it up a little bit more this year than he has in the past. You see some 4 down front from him and to, give you some different looks. But, principally, as I said, it's in that odd front cover 1, mixing in some cover 2, but you got to be certainly ready with all your man beaters against Ryan Walters' defense.
So, okay, we'll see if this is oversimplifying things. Washington doesn't seem like they should have the cornerbacks who can stick with Ohio State's wide receivers in man coverage. So how does this work for Washington if they don't have defensive backs that can stay with Ohio State's wide receivers in man coverage, and you've got to cover 1? How does this not end up with a whole lot of long completions and yards after catch and all that for Ohio State's wide receivers?
I think it's a Washington counting on, limiting the Ohio State run game to put Julian Sand and the offense behind the chains and try to get them in some bad situations. So if we use Purdue as an example last year, and maybe it's not a great example because in games like that, Ohio State can tend to keep things pretty basic, but Ohio State did run a lot of inside zone against Purdue last year into that 6-1 front with not a lot of success. And those are with 2, second round running backs who are, one of which is starting the NFL. So, if you do that and you sort of bang your head against the wall, you can get yourself in some bad situations. Washington does not, and we've talked about this, the penny front generally, like counter is a great play against penny. Washington has not fit counter well. Like Ohio State's run a lot of counter. It should be a very counter heavy game plan on the run game this week. And then the passing game, I think it's mostly like on Walters to like change it up, right? And like change up the looks and try to keep staying off balance. But I would expect, a lot of motion from Ohio State, like force Washington. Are you going to follow the motion? Are you going to rock and roll and spin leverage? How's that going to affect your run fits? A lot of bunch sets, condensed, shallow crosses, mesh, all the hits, right? Like last year we had, later in the game, they split Travion Henderson out wide. He got matched up on a Mike linebacker man to man, and they threw a 40-yard go route to him. So, you're definitely looking for ways. I would look for the tight end to be a big part of it as well, like off of play action, like leaks, throwbacks. I think it's time for them to get Max Clare more involved with the passing game regardless. Like they need a third option that's going to take some, with teams cheating, like to that point. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if in their cover one, they sort of play cover one cheat and shade the safety to whatever side Jeremiah Smith is. And so that'll put it on, obviously that opens things up for Carnell Tate, but they also would benefit from a third option coming forward right now.
One thing that's kind of unique about the Washington defense is their two starting cornerbacks, Ephesians Prysock and Takario Davis, if he can go this weekend. They're both 6'4". That is way bigger than you typically see out of cornerbacks. And Ohio State has had a lot of success with the wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate in particular, going up and getting the ball over shorter corners because they could just jump higher. Well, now you maybe are looking at not having a height advantage or being maybe even at an inch or two of height disadvantage with those guys. How does that impact things at all in terms of what you'd be looking for from Ohio State in the passing game? Or are big corners just, well, that means you're probably not going to be able to keep up with things, on a double move or whatever? How does big cornerbacks like that potentially shape what you might think about in terms of Ohio State on offense this week?
Yeah, I don't really worry about Jeremiah Smith and his ability to get open. I tend to lean towards your latter point. I mean, there's a reason you tend not to see bigger corners, and Ohio State, frankly, sees that a little bit with Davis and Igbinosun, right? Like the length gets you something, but you can also get sort of handsy, and then it challenges your short area quickness. So again, like I would expect lots of shallow crossing routes, lots of rub routes, trying to force those guys to run with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Probably lots of moving Jeremiah Smith around, particularly, they're playing heavy man, get him in the slot fades, using him in different ways, coming back across the formation, like on RPO, similar to what we saw against Oregon, where you run, counter one way and Jeremiah Smith runs that little underneath arrow route opposite. That was his first touchdown in the Rose Bowl. So I would look for like things like that, a lot of movement, a lot of making those guys chase wide receivers.
As I'm looking at this game, we've now talked about the offense and the defense on both sides. As I look at this game, this feels a lot like a game where if Ohio State gets to 30 points, Ohio State's probably in pretty decent shape in terms of winning the football game. Is this, for Washington to win this game, do they need to hold this to like a 24-21 kind of game? Can Washington win a shootout? Can, if Ohio State gets to a certain magic number, are they pretty much guaranteed to win? How do you see this sort of playing out?
I think it's going to kind of have to be a shootout for them. I guess, Washington, right? Like OU gave you your sort of game plan, I guess, if you're trying to get Ohio State to bog down the red zone, right? And like if Ohio State's that inefficient inside the 10 or inside the 20, that will obviously give them a chance to turn, what should have been 30 odd points into 20, 21 or 24. But I think it's that. I think, using the crowd to your advantage, as I said, trying to get Ohio State behind the chains. If you can limit Ohio State's run game, make the Buckeyes one-dimensional, put some pressure on Julian Saint's plate, see how he handles it, try to disguise, mix up your cover two trap, get an interception in the flat, and try to, sort of, I guess I'd use the word survive on defense for lack of a better term, but try to put your offense in some good spots and get a lead and get the crowd into it and put some pressure on Ohio State.
Well, we will see how that game plays out on Saturday afternoon, 3:30 Eastern, game on CBS. We will be out there covering this for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony and I making the trip out to Seattle. It should be a really, really fun couple days out there. Really looking forward to that. We have lots of coverage for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com and at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. So make sure you check us out in both of those places. And also make sure you check out Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, the nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.